Hello, friends, and welcome to the first lesson in our CKLA domain, Presidents and American Symbols. In this domain, we're going to learn about the United States, some of its presidents, and some important symbols. On the count of three, tell me what this is a picture of. 1, 2, 3. That's right, the United States of American flag. In this domain, we're going to hear about why this is an important American symbol. Who is this guy? You're right, George Washington. He was the first president of the United States. The capital of the United States, Washington, D.C., is named after George Washington. The capital is the city in the United States where most of the decisions that affect the country are made and where the government is located. I wonder who is the president now? Spot on, Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the current president of the United States, and he lives in the White House. This is the picture of the White House, which is in Washington, D.C. You're also going to see other pictures of the U.S. Capitol building and the Washington Monument. In earlier domains, we learned about kings and queens. I'm wondering if you can remember what is a king or a queen, what is the kingdom, where does a king or queen live, and once a king or a queen is in position or power, how long do they remain in that position? Were they elected or chosen by the people? Pause the video and tell somebody close to you, what do you remember all about these people? If you said the king is the male ruler of a kingdom and the queen is the female ruler of the kingdom, you are absolutely right. The kingdom is the place and people who are ruled by the king or queen. They live in a palace or a castle, and they will remain king or queen for the rest of their lives. And unlike the United States of America, they are not elected or chosen by the people. They were born into the position. Now I want you to think about Columbus and the Pilgrims. Do you remember why the Pilgrims came from England and landed on Plymouth Rock? If you were remembering that the Pilgrims wanted to go to their own church, but the king said they had to go to the Church of England, so the Pilgrims decided they could leave to be happy and worship as they were wanted, you are exactly right. So there are still kingdoms today, but there were many, many more kingdoms long ago. Our country, the United States of America, is not a kingdom. We don't have a king. What is the name that we call the leader of our country? Did you say the president? You are right. Our country's form of government is a republic. It is where decisions are made through a democratic process. Democracy means that decisions or it's ruled by the people. So today you're going to hear about what the President of the United States does and about the home of the President in Washington, D.C. Over the next 2 weeks, you're also going to learn about several important United States presidents and how these men helped to shape our country. So I've got some checking from understanding right now. I want you to put your thumb up or thumbs down based off of the questions I ask. Here we go. Number 1. Is the leader of the United States of America a king? If your thumb was down, you are correct. We have a president. Does the leader of the United States live in a castle? Once again, correct if your thumb was down. Does the leader of the United States live in the White House? Wow, thumbs up. Awesome job. During our read aloud today, I want you to listen to details about Washington, D.C. and the different buildings or monuments found in this city. I also want you to listen carefully to find out how the president of our democracy is different from a king. The United States flag is a symbol of our nation, the United States of America. A symbol is a picture or object that represents a word or an idea. A nation is a country. You can see that the flag is red, white, and blue. You can see that it has red and white stripes. It also has 50 stars, and each star is a symbol for one of the states in the United States of America. Tell me on the count of 3, what state do we live in? 1, 2, 3. That's right, Arizona. There is one very important city in the United States that is not in any of the 50 states. In fact, It's the nation's capital. It's the city where most of the decisions that affect the country are made and where the government is located. Our nation's capital city is part of the United States where the President of the United States lives, Washington, D.C. Remember, the President is an elected leader of our country. That means the President was chosen by the people of our nation. Men from each one of the original colonies helped write the Constitution. It is a plan for how the new country should be run. We call these men the Founding Fathers. The Founding Fathers decided they wanted the country to be run by a president instead of a king or a queen. Once a person is king or queen, they remain in that position for the rest of their lives. They are not elected by the people and might not represent the interests of the people. The Founding Fathers did not want one person to tell everyone what to do, as a king or queen does. Instead, they wanted a leader who would listen to what the people wanted and work hard to get them what they needed. To make sure the president didn't become like a king, they decided to write the Constitution, a set of rules for the president to follow. They also decided that the president would have to be elected by the people. The president would not be born into the position like a king or queen is, and they could only be president for 4 years before the people would vote again for president. What do you see in this picture? Correct! It is a picture of the White House and how it looked long ago. When the Founding Fathers started to think about where the president would live, they started to worry. If the president lived in the state he was from, it would make that state feel more important than the others. The Founding Fathers were afraid that one of the states would try to take over and be in charge of the others. They decided to write into the Constitution that a special city should be built, no bigger than 10 miles wide, which would serve as the nation's capital. This capital city would not be in any state, so no one state could say that it was in charge of the country. This city was to be called Washington, in honor of George Washington, our first president. Eventually, Washington grew into the area we now call the District of Columbia, or Washington, D.C. Tell me on the count of 3, who was Washington, D.C. named after? 1, 2, 3. You got it, George Washington. If you visited Washington, D.C. today, you would be able to see the White House, the house where the president lives. The president moves into this house when they become president and then moves out when the next president is elected. But not just presidents live here, their families and even their pets would come and live with them in the White House. Have you ever seen a picture of this dog? His name is Bo. He lives with President Barack Obama and his family. We will hear more about President Obama later. When President Obama was first chosen to be president in 2008, he promised his daughters they could get a dog to live with him in the White House. Bo moved into the White House about 3 months after President Obama and his family moved there, and one of his favorite activities is playing outside with President Obama's daughters. The president doesn't just live in the White House, they work there too. The part of the White House where the presidents work is called the West Wing. The president's office has a special name too, the Oval Office. Sometimes the president signs laws or gives speeches from the Oval Office. One of the president's most important jobs is to enforce the rules of the Constitution, which means to make sure the rules are followed. The president doesn't just run around government alone as the king would. The government is made up of 3 groups: the president, Congress, and the Supreme Court. The Founding Fathers made sure that all 3, the president, the Congress, and the Supreme Court, had equally important jobs so the president didn't hold all the power like a king or queen, and so that people's liberties would be protected. Liberties are our freedoms. Remember when the Pilgrims left England because they didn't have an important liberty? The liberty to choose which church to attend. Because so many of our past presidents have lived in Washington, D.C., it is also a place where people often build statues and other buildings to honor them. These statues and other buildings are called monuments. If you visited Washington, D.C., you would find many monuments to past presidents. One famous monument is called the Lincoln Memorial. It is on the left side of this picture. Another famous monument is the Jefferson Memorial on the right. These monuments are symbols to remind us how important these past presidents were in our nation's history. The Washington Monument is one of many people's favorite monuments to visit in Washington, D.C. It is the world's tallest stone building. When you go to the top of the tower, you can see all of Washington, D.C. But you don't have to go to Washington, D.C. to appreciate our country and its leaders. Every time you say the Pledge of Allegiance or sing the national anthem, you can let everyone around you know that you are proud to be a part of our country. Please stand while we say the Pledge of Allegiance together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next time you see the American flag, remember that our 50 states all share a belief in liberty and justice, or freedom and fairness for everyone. And remember that these United States of America all share the same government, which is led by the President, the Congress, and the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. You should now be able to name some of the buildings and monuments that we've talked about in Washington, D.C. I would love for you to be able to tell someone in your family something about them and how a president is different than a king. Until next time.